No, there's no fancy intro. I'm uh, I'm not that fancy yet. I actually will become fancy eventually. So, hey
Eventually.
guys, this is Arizona Rangers podcast. We're gonna go ahead and talk about wargaming and miniatures and painter miniatures or assemble miniatures while we're doing this. I have my friend Tim here. He's from up north.
Up north, that's funny.
So I'm in Tucson and Tim is in Tempe, right? Or
No, Phoenix. Actually,
Phoenix,
technically Peoria,
Peoria.
up by Lake Pleasant.
So if you're gonna put a pin in the middle of Arizona, that's where it's at.
Pretty much. That's where we're at.
And Tim, what are you working on here?
These days or right now?
Right now, the project.
Right now, I've been infatuated with this fun little game,
All right.
Gaslands. Anybody that follows me on, my blog, I haven't updated my blog in forever. I'm currently building cars like a madman for Gaslands Refueled. Actually, we'll see if this works. Let me do the pseudo with the camera. There it is.
There you go.
So yeah, I'm just trying to get used to holding it.
That's nice.
So that's a little truck I'm working on right now. It's part of my stray cats team, is what I call them.
Uh-huh.
I like the rat rod look, and since I'm so poor, I don't have a real rat rod. I guess I have to do it in Hot Wheels size. So I've been working on a lot of that. Last few weeks, I have been doing quite a bit of painting. I haven't been doing a whole lot of gaming. It's been more painting.
Okay.
So on our AZ Game Friends Facebook page that Bill's part of, I was sharing some pictures of some really old school miniatures that I did. I mean, we're talking 40-year-old miniatures, old Grenadier, advanced D&D miniatures. I just got on a kick one day and was like, I wonder if I could repaint these because they were really bad.
Oh, wow.
And stripped a bunch of them, threw them in the old citrus strip, cleaned them up, and kicked out. Probably I'm looking at right above my desk here, right above the camera, probably about 25, 30 models that I kicked out in about 2 weeks. So it was nice, kind of a throwback to getting those miniatures out that started my wargaming way back in the day.
All right.
So I wanted to pay them homage and do them up proper before I kicked the bucket, and they looked like crap and somebody found them.
Yeah, I'm afraid to look at my first miniatures. They're in a box of storage, and I know their paint jobs are terrible.
Dude, some of these had Tester's enamel paint on them.
Whew.
And I use citrus strip to strip off paint off metal miniatures and Hot Wheels and things.
Yeah.
And they had to go in twice because it was so bad. But hey, live and learn, right? 40 plus years of painting and you figure it out. The other thing that I've been working on, and I just put them away too. Sorry, my cat Shadow is going to make an appearance in the background. So for a while, I was working with Talon Games for Cav, which is the giant mecha robot type thing that Reaper had for a while. And I have a huge box. I have actually like 2 Kickstarters worth of robots. And for like about 2 years, I was working with John Walker of Talon Games and painting up models and things for him. So I got on a kick a couple weeks ago, and I think I painted up like 25 or 30 more Cav models, which are bigger than BattleTech figures. In the reason why I was doing it is another game that I love, or another game designer that I actually love, Jay Wiley of Wiley Games.
Oh, yeah.
He does Fistful of Lead and all that.
Uh-huh.
He is getting ready to put out a rule set called Battlesuit Alpha, which is a mecha game using the same Fistful of Lead rules that for the Old West and everything else that he's done. And I've been bugging him for probably about a year and a half to get that out. And he's actually been doing some test games and whatnot. And he's going to be getting that hopefully within this year. He'll have it out. And so I needed to have some painted up mechs not in hexagon bases, just rounds. So I just went through and, like I said, painted up 25, 30 mechs just out of the blue, just for the heck of it. So
Cool.
Eclectic. That's my painting style, has been eclectic in the last couple months.
Same here. Yeah. Well, right now my project on my desk is American
AWI.
American War of Independence. Yeah.
Nice.
And doing the second Massachusetts.
Nice.
Got a little
Great book.
book to go by. And this is part of my submission for a competition with other YouTubers. So,
Oh, really?
yeah,
Doing a whole unit or just one individual figure?
it's an entire unit. I've got 24 miniatures here. So,
Nice. Now, what rule system are you going to use?
I'm gonna set them up for black powder. I know it's simple, but hey,
Dude, I love black powder. Oh, my hair's all jacked up from my headset from earlier. Or my cat. I don't know which. We love black powder up here. Unfortunately, we haven't played. I think our last black powder game that we had was maybe 3 or maybe 4 years ago, where we did. I'm trying to remember Salem's Church scenario that we came up with. We actually put together a table. Now, it was all in 28 mil. We played it up at Imperial Outpost Games. I think the table was 16 by 8 or 16 by 12 of a table. We estimate that we had probably 5,000, 6,000 models on the table.
that's amazing.
all painted, all based, everything ready to go. It was a long day. It was a fun day.
Yeah.
Unlike the day that you came up and we played the tank game, which was not fun for either one of us. But yeah, it was a great game. We had, I think, 10 players for that game when we had them come up. And the only hitch was to play is you either had to supply models or paint a unit. So that was our only caveat. And when our small units, I think our small units were 20. Well, let's see. I did mine for, it's about 20 models for a small unit. And for large units, we were doing 36 figures, if not bigger. So primarily, mostly Foundry and Perry Miniatures. So it was a blast. We loved it. We even actually got from Old Glory the casualties. So instead of laying down tokens or chips next to our units when they've taken casualties, we would lay casualty figures down to represent. And so on each side of the table, we actually had, this was for Civil War, we actually had like little dioramas of, combat hospitals with all the dead around it. So we had a place to put the figures when we weren't using them, and then we could grab them from there and put them out on the table. So it was a great game. I love Black Powder. Unfortunately, we just don't get to play it all that much up here anymore. Well, we don't get to play a whole lot anymore, but that's neither here nor there. So what else have you been up to, Bill?
Oh well, I've been doing mecha stuff too recently.
Okay.
But with old school BattleTech.
Nice.
So I've been doing a lot of 3D printing. So I found some files where I could print up some mecha, and I went to town on that. And then I've been doing a lot of Wild West organic.
Yeah.
So over the past year, my 3D printer's been really busy, and
busy
terrain with it.
A busy printer is not a bad thing. Although I don't have a printer, I have access to one. Tom Oplaka in our group, Pontanowski on our friends group, he's got one, and it's a Mars whatever it is resin printer. And
all right.
I think he's printed more stuff for me than he's printed for himself.
Oh boy.
So let's see, he's printed a Warmaster Undead Vampire Counts army for me.
Oh wow.
He printed a bunch of Crimson Sky planes because eventually I want to do another participation game like I did for the Gothic Horror game that I did 2 years ago with once again Jay Wiley's Starfighter rules, which you can use for pulp planes. So I painted up 32, I think, planes is what it was.
Wow.
That Tom printed up for me.
That's nice.
I've had Tom print up some Flames of War stuff for me, and right now I'll try to see if you can see it in the picture here in the camera. Let's see. Will it show up? I don't want to tilt it.
Moderns.
Yeah, these are here are T-3485s.
Oh, okay.
Here, if I can get them up in the camera right, T-62s.
Oh, okay.
This is for Fate of the Nation. So I have a Syrian force, which the Syrians use a lot of old Russian equipment, T-3485s, Su-100s, T-54s, T-62s. And with Battlefront right now not having a whole lot on their website and their stock being very, very low, I've turned to Tom and said, hey, can you print me some T-3485s? And can you print me some T-62s? And because I need to finish out my force that I already have. And he said, sure. So what I'm doing for that is I'm actually doing some trade paint for him, where I think I've got for all the stuff he just printed up there, that's like 20 tanks. I think I'm painting 5 tanks for him. So, but hey, he's good with it. I'm good with it. Everybody's happy at the end of the day, and that's what's important. So,
yeah, I don't have a resin printer. I have the filament kind.
Filament,
and
which those are fine for terrain. If you're going to do big terrain pieces and stuff like you were doing with your Old West buildings.
Oh yeah.
Because for Old West, I think because the one thing that bugs me about those filament printers is the lines that you get that from it layering down on each other. And if you're doing small enough figures, it's not that big of a deal. But 28 mils, I've seen 28 mils, and I've actually had to paint for. I actually painted for God, who was the pirate game?
Blood and Plunder.
Blood and Plunder.
Yeah,
I did some paint work for them a couple of years ago, and they literally had printed out with a filament printer all their stuff before it released, and then they cast it in metal. So even the metal casting still had all the serration lines in it from the filament. And I was just like, ugh, this is when you're trying to do washes and inks, man, it doesn't like those lines.
Well, yeah, you know what? Yeah, the washes and inks aren't good, but dry brushing I've found is the way to go, and
Yeah.
also the source files where they come from makes a big difference.
Yep.
I actually have dipped my toe into the blood and plunder thing too. I haven't jumped fully into it because I'm waiting for my Kickstarter to arrive, which is
Okay.
the Raise the Black.
I've heard
That's
that.
supposed to. It was scheduled to arrive in November, but they kicked it back to January. So yeah.
Now, how many of your people that watch this know who I am, and you know why I make faces about pirate games?
Well, will this tell everyone what you've done in the past?
Well, okay. So the reason why I give Bill grief about that, and the one time I was trying to go down to play a game with Bill and wanted to play something like Gaslands, and he wanted to play another game. He somehow likes this game called Legends of the High Seas. That's some crazy dude out in the middle of the desert um, wrote, which was me, back in 2008 for Warhammer Historical. So I spent a lot of years reading, researching, doing it, and of course then getting the opportunity to write for Warhammer Historical, which is no more. And my book is now like a $350 book, if you can find it. Dude, yeah, it has gone up to that price. And if you find one that has my signature in it, where I signed it, because there was a games day back in 2009 I went to in Ontario, California, and they gave me a stack of like 100 books. Said, here, sign these for Black Library at the time. So those are fetching sometimes $450, $500 for a signed book, which blows me away. And I'm like, I've got 2 books left. Can I make $1,000 off of this? But no, I love pirates. I was infatuated with pirates as a kid. Was inspired. I loved the Legends of the Old West that Mark Latham wrote for Warhammer Historical. I quickly modified, actually, Lord of the Rings, which I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan and game player. Don't get to play it as much anymore, but played with that and said, hey, I can make a pirate game out of this. And that was about the same time that Mark was writing his Old West game. And I'm good friends with Mark Latham, as we banter back and forth all the time. And I kind of always joke about this with Mark. I said, here you are in an island in the North Atlantic, and you're writing about Old West and Indians, cowboys and Indians. And here I am in the middle of the desert in Old West country writing about pirates. What's wrong with this picture? And we chuckle about that all the time. And but yeah, Blood and Plunder and I'm not going to toot my own horn, but Mike Tunya is one of the guys for Blood and Plunder. He actually contacted me, and he wanted me to read through his rules before Blood and Plunder came out, because he used to play Legends of the High Seas. And the reason why they wrote Blood and Plunder is because Legends of the High Seas went out of print and Warhammer Historical stopped being a company.
Oh, wow.
And so they actually wrote it because they're like, well, what if we did our own game? Like so many gamers, because I'm just a gamer like everybody else.
Yeah.
What if we write our own game? And so I was like, sweet. When he sent me a message and he was like, hey, I really love your game, and would you mind reading through and, proofreading and maybe play testing? So I did some early play testing with Blood and Plunder. It's a good game. It's not a game that, to me, Pirates is all about individuals and that skirmish. They went more of a 1500, 1600 style pirate game with more units.
Yeah.
Which, hey, that's your thing. Awesome. It's still a great game. I mean, I've got some of their figures in my collection. I had, for a short time, about 4 of their boats because I had this grand idea. I was going to do a like a Duke Siegfried kind of game with boats and everything. And yeah, that didn't work out, but
Yeah.
because of the gamer ADD. But yeah, so and at that same time, also, I don't know if you remember a game called, I think it was Cutlass, that came out by it was Mark Sims of Crusader did it. It was more fantasy pirate stuff.
Really?
I'd actually had chatted with him and saw that before it came out. And it's funny because I don't do much Well, I'll tell you, I'll keep that up to another subject. At that time, I wasn't doing a whole lot more writing, and I was kind of sick of pirates. That's why I wanted to do a second book, Warhammer Historical. Didn't want to greenlight it because I think they had problems with, they didn't know if they were still going to be around. Because the second book for Legends of the High Seas, and I get this asked all the time, was going to be called Shipwrecked, which I had more scenarios in it, more campaign stuff in it. I was introducing island natives. I was introducing other crews, because in the main book you only had Royal Navy, pirates, and privateers. So I was actually diving into more of the national pirates, going with the pirates in the Arabia coast and things like that. Just wanted to expand it. GW didn't want to greenlight it. They didn't want to do it, and basically told me after 10,000 copies of Legends of the High Seas was printed, now we're going to go a different route. Which the different route was, we're closing the branch of the service, I guess.
I guess
so.
Equitable enough for GW. I guess.
Yeah, well, but with that being said, I did do a little bit of foray into. I was approached by the old guy, Vince Respond, who does Winged Hussar Publishing.
Yeah.
He approached me and asked me to write a game, in which I did, which was called Heroic, which was a small skirmish game to be used for any period. And we had ideas of grandeur, but once again, what I found is when you're writing for somebody else, they have a vision for what they want versus what the author wants. So the game really didn't go. I don't think it. Some people played it. It's pretty much basically almost Lord of the Rings with a D10 system kind of format, because I love that style. I love that format of the game. And I have not seen a dime from that game, which that it's not, it is what it is, right? I wrote it. It's out there. I got another published book. Okay. But most recently, though, and bringing up this discussion, a buddy of mine here on the Phoenix group, Joe DeRoche, actually approached me about writing a Viking game similar to Legends of the High Seas. And then, to give people who care some information, the Legend series that Warhammer Historical had laid out was going to be for multiple periods. So you were going to have a Legends of the Old West, Legends of the High Seas, Legends of the Far East, Legends of the Vikings. I mean, they were going to, they had done the Gladiator thing, but it really didn't go that far or work that well. But they had ideas of doing it further on. And if you look at Mark Latham's book, Showdown, the Legends of the Old West book, he has in there some of the other periods that they were talking about, and they had actually courted authors to write. I had actually seen Alessio Cavatore, who went over to Warlord, and the reason why I saw this is because one of the guys that's credited for the layout work and the design work of Pirates, the Legends of the High Seas, and for Old West, Pete Borlas, actually came out and visited and stayed with me for about 2 weeks. And we went through the manuscript and the pre-production print of Legends of the High Seas, going through, okay, here's an error. Here's this needs to be changed. This needs to be fixed. And we made all the changes, red penned the manuscript, and then submitted it back. And of course, they never made the changes, which seems to be apropos for that company. But at that time, Alessio was working on Legends of the Samurai, in which Pete had actually had some drawn up, some layout work already done for the book, so it was going to be, think of, like I said, the Legends of the High Seas and Legends of the Old West game based for Samurai. And a little historical footnote, when I sent my proposal to Warhammer Historical back in 2006, late 2006, I submitted 2 proposals. One was for Legends of the High Seas for pirates. The other was for Samurai. I wanted to do a Samurai book. And they had actually said, because the Pirates of the Caribbean movie had just come out, GW wanted to go with the pirate thing. And so they're like, let's focus on the pirate thing, and then we'll think about the Samurai thing later on down the road.
Yeah.
And so I'd always shelved that and had it in the back burner, in the back of my mind, that, hey, I want to do a good Samurai game, a Kurosawa kind of style, Seven Samurai sort of, because that's what the Legends of the High Seas, Legends of the Old West are. Hollywood historical is what I call it.
Yeah.
It's not true historical. It's not true fantasy. It's about having fun. I've got some pirates. I've got some stuff. Because, you can play more historical themed games. But I wanted that flair and that itch, that Errol Flynn kind of vibe. That's what struck me with the Old West game, the old, serials that you would see, the Old West serials and things. And, Mark Latham and I both are on that same page. We loved watching the old movies as a kid. So we wanted to recreate that goofiness a little bit with it. And, I mean, heck, Kurosawa's movie, The Seven Samurai, dude, that's, Seven Samurai taking on a horde of bad guys. And then of course everybody takes, and that was taken from, Old West movies and everything. Legends would have been perfect for it, but they did not opt to go that way. But anyway, my friend Joe was like, you did such a great job with the the High Seas game. He says, what would it take for you to write a game for Vikings? And he goes, using the same kind of format that you had for Heroic, with changing some stuff up.
Yeah.
So I said, well, let me think about it. And I took about a month to think about it, and sat down at my computer here and kicked out what I'm now calling Legend of the Vikings is what our working title is. We are going to self-publish. Basically, if you're a fan of Legends of the Old West, Legends of the High Seas, you're going to see this game the same way. Some verbiage obviously has been changed. Some mechanics have been changed a little bit. It uses a D10 system instead of a D6. This way you can get a greater, span on things. But it's going to be based off of, as Joe told me, I want like the 13th Warrior, kind of Viking game, where there's some fantasy elements in there, but also it's historical, but it's not really historical. So we were like, okay, that's awesome. I can do this. And so I wrote that up. And then as I was writing that up, I actually wrote Legend of the Samurai. So I have already written the rules. I'm working on the campaign aspect for it, but the main rules for playing a samurai game with 5 to 30 models, my buddy Joe and I are talking about self-publishing and going that route. And the reason why I'm going to go self-publishing is because then I have full total control over it again.
Nice.
And like I said before, I love Jay Wiley of Wiley Games and Dave Phipps of Pulp Alley.
Yeah.
Those guys, I talk to them constantly via chat. I've never met neither one of them in face-to-face, but I'm either on a Discord channel with them or doing Facebook back and forth. And Jay Wiley told me, just print your own rules, man. It's easy. It's cheap enough. Yeah. And when you sell them, you get all the profit.
Yeah.
So I'm actively actually writing in my spare time to get some get these 2 rule books up. And my plan is it's basically going to be a continuation of the Legends series that GW started, but it's my own series, obviously. Legend instead of Legends. Not a big strain there. But I want to look at other periods. I want to look at World War II for, I love Band of Brothers, focusing on one, unit in World War II, doing something along those lines. I love, doing stuff, I'm a big fan of like Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon. I mean, I love the 80s. I'm a cheesy guy. I love the 80s movie of Flash Gordon, with the Queen soundtrack. Flash, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Doing something along with those lines, taking a set of rules that you can use for any period is something that, because the other thing is I haven't come up with a working title for it yet, but one of the things I've been interested in doing also too is Vietnam. Vietnam is a period that doesn't get played a whole lot.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I wasn't a big fan of Vietnam because, I was born in 68 during the Tet Offensive, right? I heard everything. I grew up as a kid in the 70s, seeing the guys come home and the Vietnam vets and things. So it was very hard for me to say, yeah, I want to do this as a wargaming. For the longest time, I stayed away from the Vietnam period out of respect for the veterans. And the one thing that changed my mind is I had a friend of my dad's. He was part of the first Cav, Air Cav. He was a side gunner on a Huey. John Shockley was his name. He since has now passed away. I was at my parents' house, and he was there visiting my parents, and we were sitting there talking, and we were talking about it, and he had done, I think, 3 tours over there in Vietnam. And I'm asking him, stuff in Apocalypse Now and Platoon, did that stuff really happen? And he's like, for the most part, yeah. He goes, a lot of it was a lot of boredom, but it was, it's the up and down of combat, right? But he said a lot of that stuff, yeah, some of it was over centralized, and some of it, might not have happened exactly that way. And he goes, and there were probably some atrocity. He goes, I can only speak to what I saw when I was there. Right. He says, I can tell you a story where we went out on a mission flying, and I was harnessed into my side gun, and the helicopter banked heavy, and I slipped and fell, and I was basically on the skid for the whole entire flight while we were taking fire. He says, and you want to know what's freaking crazy is being, shot at, and you can't do anything about it, and you're hanging there on the side of the helicopter while the pilot's trying to get back and get out of the way of things. He says, so, that was, he goes, that kind of stuff happened. But with talking to him, and I said, I don't want to play a miniature game where, people I knew passed away and died or, had issues. And he says, look, you're not really shooting people. You're really not in a war. He says, to me, it's more of an honor that you're going to do this and that you would gain that. He goes, I appreciate what you're doing. He says, and I know you're not making light of the conflict of what any of the veterans went through. He says, but, he goes, you should do it. He says, especially if nobody else is doing it. And so I kind of thought about that, and that's in the back of my head, especially now, because one of my favorite companies, Rubicon Miniatures, is actually producing quite a bit for Vietnam era. So I think somebody's probably got a Vietnam conflict book or something coming, because Rubicon is doing 156 scale helicopters, tanks, infantry, Viet Cong. I mean, dude, they are cranking out a bunch of stuff for a period that doesn't have a rule set yet, unless they're doing it for their own rule set or they're working for somebody. But, so yeah, that's what, I want to take my own set of rules, letting them be maybe only $15, if that, for the cost of the rules. Because, I chuckle at the prices, the way rule books have gotten now.
They're pretty
And
expensive.
I want to get back to the old school gaming, having fun, you know.
Everything is just simply selling the PDF,
Yeah.
War Game Vault or something like that. That would
Well,
be.
I thought about that. And Jay Wiley said, if you're going to sell the PDF, because War Game Vault gets a cut of that. He says, why not sell the PDF yourself?
Okay.
Good point. So if you go to Wiley Games, www.wileygames, like I'm pumping Jay's stuff, you can actually download, you can either buy a hard copy of the books, anywhere from $15 to $20 for a softbound book, or you can spend $5 and get the PDF. Because that's what we played in last October, 2 Octobers ago, Bill, when we played the Gothic Horror game.
Yeah.
That was the PDF that I had printed out for Gothic Horror with Fistful of Lead. So you can still get an order and download. That's from him. And he's like, this way, if you ever have to make any changes, you can make the changes and, boom. He goes, but why give somebody else a couple of bucks when you could have all of it? Because once again, he's right. And in his games, like right now, he's getting ready to release his fantasy rules that he has coming out. And he actually put up there his most expensive rule book was on pre-order. He did a 3-book series for fantasy, which was the first book was basically the combat system, and it was like $15. Right. The second book was about wizards. And the third book that he did was they're $20 is what they are. And the third book was on dungeon crawling. So he actually, you can buy the books separately for $60. And then his system uses a card deck activation, this regular 52 card deck activation. Yeah. But he actually had printed out his own cards with it. So, which we didn't, I can't remember when we played the Gothic Horror game if I was using it, because I didn't have the Gothic Horror cards. So I don't know if we were using the Old West cards or a regular playing deck, but you can get that for like $25, the card deck, because he's just using whoever he uses online for cards. So he put together a bundle pack with the hardbound rule book. He actually decided to do a full color hardbound rule book with all 3 of the books all compiled together. It's like $65. Or you can buy the individual smaller books, which are in color, they're softbacks, for $20. So for $5 more, you can get a hardcover. It's got some other, I guess, limited edition artwork in it, if you're into that kind of thing. Uh-huh. But he's very much is like, you know what, if you're going to do it yourself, man. In this day and age now where you can self-publish and self-print, why do you need a big game company or somebody to do something for you? It's just one of those things where you can do it yourself. Why not? So
got to get your word out there.
Yeah. And here's the thing. So with Jay Wiley's game, Fistful of Lead, I found that off of, I was trying to remember somebody's blog. I saw he did a review of Old West games, and he's like, here's my current favorite game is this Fistful of Lead rule book. And I saw it and I was like, okay, I'll spend $15 and order the book and get it. And actually, I think I spent the $5 for the PDF, honestly. And I got it and I was like, wow, this is a fast, quick, fun game. It's the Gothic Horror game, Bill, that we played with you and your wife and everybody. So it's just a great little game system. And the one thing that Jay is trying to do with his rule set, and this is why we kind of chuckle about this, because him and I have discussed this before. These big game companies every 3 years seem to change the rules up, make units obsolete, make models obsolete, so we can sell you more stuff and keep you buying more and more stuff. I don't know who I might be talking about, GW. But you know, honestly, most gamers can't get through what they have. They can't get a fully painted army before the next version comes out. And then when they get everything painted, and I've had friends that have said this, I just got my whole army painted, and now I can't use half of it because it's moot. So his whole philosophy is keep it simple, keep it cohesive. So that way, if you're playing Fistful of Lead or you're playing Galactic Heroes or you're playing the Gothic Horror supplement, it's all the same rules. There's just some flavor added into it. And he strongly believes and says, if you want, he goes, you don't have to buy any of my books. Just buy the Fistful of Lead rule book and convert it to whatever you want to use it for. Add your own stuff to it. Don't, because right now him and his buddy Steve are actually using the Galactic Heroes rule set that he wrote, which is for, he's playing Star Wars. They're buying the what is it? The Legion? Not Atomic Mass, but all the Legions.
Yeah. They're
buying that and they're playing with his rules. So it's like, this Fistful, the Fantasy Flight or whatever, whoever has Legions now, because God, they've moved around.
I think it's Atomic Mass.
Is it? Because it was it Asmodee before? Or no, it was Fantasy Flight, wasn't it?
Yeah, Fantasy Flight was bought up by Asmodee.
Okay.
Which is a board game company, actually.
Well, Asmodee is also the largest distributor of board games in Europe. So that's where most of they've got their money from. But anyway, Jay's like, hey, if you got access to a printer, print out your own miniatures too, And trust me, man, with the 3D printing now that's happening, dude, you can pretty much get whatever you need from an STL file and print out. There's a lot of like Tom. I said my buddy Tom printed out, because we're going to eventually here, once I get some more bases in for my Vampire Count Warmaster army, I've got stuff, dude, that he printed out for me that it's his 6 mil or whatever, 10 mil, whatever. I can't remember what Warmaster scale is. Dude, when I zoom in on the pictures, you can see like high detail on these things because the sculptor sculpts at a 28 mil size and then just reduces it down to 10 mil. So, and some of these sculpts are beautiful, man. I've got a huge, beautiful army waiting to be painted. Actually, as I say that, I have the box of stuff that I'm still waiting to finish doing. We'll see how good this will work. So let's see. Does my camera focus in on it enough? It's not really clear, but they're beautiful models. I mean, the skull detail on the barding is just phenomenal. I mean, you can tell this guy, well, I can't because I don't have my glasses on, but when you paint them and you look at them, I think it was from Dragon Forge is the company, I think is what it was called, that Tom got the STL files for, and he's a Patreon for it. So Tom's doing a Wood Elf army he printed for himself. I've got my Undead army. And actually, as I think about it, maybe this will show up better. Let's see if the camera will pick up this. Now this is that 10 mil. Let's see. Is it picking it up? It's hard to tell. I got to get a better camera.
Oh, okay.
But it's a little diorama for it. And then let me grab. So here is a unit of skeletons that I did.
Nice. Oh, and those are for Warmaster, huh?
Yeah, Warmaster. So they're based, on basically it is a metal I think it's 100 by 25 by 100 is what it is. So the models are beautiful, dude.
You know what?
Good.
What models I've been salivating over, thinking about getting a resin printer because of these models are because, like you said, you're thinking about doing samurai. I'm already neck deep in samurai stuff.
Yeah, you are.
But these models are amazing. Let me share it here.
Okay.
These are STL files from mini factory.com. Let's see.
Technology.
Yeah. Oh, let's see here. Okay. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got
Nice.
Oshikaru,
Nice.
and these would be resin
Nice.
printing. And most of the time when you get like folks that are doing samurai, they ignore the Oshikaru. But this guy has an entire set, and and I think they're fantastic models. If I had a resin printer, I'd be all about this.
Well, you know that new Jupiter printer. Well, it's like I think $5, but the Mars printer, which that's what Tom uses. I can't remember the name of the company, but it's Mars, whatever it is, the version of it. He's got like a 3.5 by 5.5 inch print plate. And I think he said he can do about 8 inches tall. But depending on how you layer them up, dude, you can get quite a few, models on a small print plate. And dude, you could definitely do those. That's for sure. Now you're making me itch to finish writing and paint up some samurai.
So this, if you're doing that, I would maybe reach out to this guy, Kira Shinibako Miniatures, and see if you could do a collaboration.
Could. Definitely could. Because those are beautiful models, man. I mean, I'm very, very impressed with the way 3D printing is going. And yeah, you're right. There's not a whole lot out there. Especially for these guys. Ashigura. Is it Ashigura or?
Those are samurai right there.
Those are actually samurai there?
Oshikaru were the foot soldiers.
Right. Yeah, see, I took my glasses off. That's why I couldn't see.
Now, another company that I've been, since I've got a filament printer, I've been collecting a bunch of and printing up a bunch of is 3D Alien Worlds.
3D Alien Worlds, huh?
And those folks, they specialize in terrain.
Okay.
So their newest thing is the pagoda.
Nice. I think I saw that on somewhere. Somebody was telling about that.
They got all sorts of stuff. Your
seppuku
command setup.
Yeah.
If you've got a ridiculous amount of table space, you can do an entire castle. I think that fits in a 3.
Dude, it has interior too?
Yes.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
So each level's got to have its own interior. That is,
Yeah. It's amazing stuff this guy makes. I'm not doing that castle because that's a huge footprint on the table, and
Yeah, but see, with a castle, that would be its own scenario in itself.
yeah.
Storming the levels kind of thing. So one game, I'm going to throw out a PS4 game recommendation if you're into samurai. Ghosts of Tsushima, which is for the PS4. Before my PS4 crapped out and died on me, my brother had given it to me, and it's basically you're playing as a samurai warrior through Japan, fighting off a Mongol horde, basically. And dude, that's what really got the bug going again for me for the samurai stuff, because it's all this kind of stuff right here, right? All the buildings, everything, and it's a you get inspiration from all kinds of places. But wow, I mean, I was looking at ordering from Sarissa Precision in the UK to get some of their line of Japanese stuff.
Because
they do
the
nice
best stuff I've seen.
The only downside to these 3D printed like this, like with the interior, I was thinking about that on the castle. Dude, you know how hard it is going to be paint the interior of that castle unless it's modular and it's all, you have to pre-paint it before you assemble it?
This guy is got you covered.
Does he?
Yeah, all the floors in the castle you glue in.
Nice.
So you can actually you print them separately. Let me see here. So it comes like that,
When you print it, right?
and then the mats you can actually just glue in after painting them.
Nice.
And then you
I'm thinking if that was all printed out, all as one piece, what a pain in the butt it is to paint it, make it look good.
Yeah, this guy he's been doing it for a while, so
That's a thinker right there. He thought through it. I like that.
yeah,
And how much is that file?
that file there? Let me see here. Castle. See, I'm thinking it's way too big of a file or footprint on the table.
Well, if you start now, in 6 months, you'll have it done.
Yeah.
Printing.
Well, to me, with like I like the skirmish stuff.
Yeah.
And to do a castle, it's an entire like either sneaking in to assassinate a dignitary or you're doing an entire siege.
Right.
And the sneaking in is kind of my style with the ninjas and stuff, but I don't know about doing an entire siege with that. Although,
see, that would be a table. That would be something you'd set up at a show. If we ever get back to doing shows again, to get that wow factor on the table, I could definitely see dropping that thing down on one end of like a 4x8 table and really only using 4x4, the field, the village leading up to the castle, just as that is a piece. But yeah, dude,
this is to me more manageable and actually more along the lines of what I picture samurai street fights
right.
would be in, mainly because of my influence by the Kurosawa movies and stuff like that, like Lone Wolf and Cub and Zatoichi and you name it. They're all usually in this type of.
Well, yeah, and I mean it's a good setting for that. I mean, trust me, I love the skirmish game. I used to play Warhammer Ancient Battles, you know that.
Oh yeah.
And now that I'm older, dude, give me about a dozen figures to paint. That's all I want to paint. I don't want to crank through an army anymore. I don't have a problem putting together terrain and painting terrain, but building like a 3x3 or a 4x4 board,
yeah,
definitely is manageable. And that's like, you can barely see it in the upper corner up here behind me, my shelf. And those are all my foreground buildings, foreground and Sarissa buildings for Old West. So I've got quite a bit of, I got quite a bit of money invested in Sarissa and foreground.
Well, yeah, my wife just got me some Sarissa. I haven't assembled it yet. Oh, where is it? I got it over here. This right here.
Got to go. Oh, the Stagecoach. Nice.
And then I got the, and then I ordered separately from a different company. Gunfighter's Ball.
Oh, yeah. Knuckle Duster.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was the last Adepticon I went to, which was 2018, 2019, I think.
Yeah.
I spent most of my money at two different booths at Adepticon. One, pulp figures with Bob merch, because I love the pulp era, Indiana Jones kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I spent money with Bob, and then I went over to the guy that had Knuckle Duster with the Gunfighter's Ball and spent the rest of my money over there. So I've got, horses, saddled saddled up horses, but just at the hitching post. So I got a bunch of those. I bought some of his, Longhorn steer. I bought a lot of the store owners, shopkeep owners, tavern owner kind of stuff, just bystanders for it. Because once again, Old West, dude, I got quite a bit of Old West stuff that I've had. But at the time when I was there, he had just done his Gunfighters Ball Kickstarter had just funded. And so that was his first show. So he actually had some of the Kickstarter, and he wouldn't sell them to me, some of the Kickstarter prizes that he was going to be giving, rewards for Kickstarters.
Yeah.
He had done most of the characters from a movie that sadly would never be made today, Blazing Saddles. But he had he had a Mongo riding the ox. And I'm like, oh man, and he's like, no, this is the only one I have, because it was in resin. He hadn't cast it yet. And I'm like, oh, come on, man. That was a Kickstarter only type thing. So does he sell them on the website now?
Yeah. So,
nice.
Your wait is patiently waited for it to become available. It is.
Nice. It only took, 2 years? Patience is a virtue. So.
Yeah, I just finished making a bunch of Wild West Gunfighters for Andrea.
Okay. So when are you going to be putting on another game, my friend?
I don't know. Andrea and I just played a game last weekend.
Playing a game with your wife doesn't count because you're always there. You have to. Because, I'm bummed that I couldn't come down and game with you that one Saturday.
Yeah.
My freaking schedule and everything else, life gets in the way. That's the sad thing is.
Yeah. I'm working Saturdays now, but I'm off on Sundays.
See, that's rough, dude, because, I'm looking at possibly switching jobs, so I may have a rotating schedule, depending on if they like me or not. But, Sundays are always rough.
Yeah, and then I work 410, so I'm off
Okay.
on Wednesdays and Thursdays. But usually people aren't off on those days.
Well, that's just like me. I get off right now with work at 1:30 in the afternoon. So by 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, I'm toast. I'm done for the night. And when most of your friends get off at 5 o'clock still, even though they're working from home, there's no way to do that. Now, tomorrow I am supposed to, my buddy Mike Wilster from the, I'll plug their show, What's New with Mike and Jeff, their podcast, video cast, whatever you want to call it on YouTube. Him and I are getting together tomorrow to play some Gaslands. So it's been about probably 3 weeks.
Huh.
I'm actually going to be gaming in a shop to begin with too, which is kind of not gaming here at the house. We got a relatively newer game store over in Surprise called Dungeon Gaming Center. That
Okay.
they're a little mom and pop store with their son working there too, and the typical. They've got the Pokemon, Magic, card, crack stuff, but they also do a little bit of GW. Right now they got a big, huge BattleTech group that I guess plays on Friday night, and we're trying to get the Gaslands thing up and going to get people back. We had a pretty good vibe going before COVID hit. Imperial Outpost, we were getting quite a few, and Mike and I were gonna run a Gaslands Day, car show, swap meet, and racing day is what we were gonna do.
Huh.
You could come up, check out people's cars that they built, primarily me and Mike, because by far I have 60 plus cars already built. I only use 3.
Okay.
And now I'm working on another one. So this will be my 61st car that I'm building. But we were going to do like kind of a swap meet. And inevitably what happens when you're playing Gaslands is you buy a lot of Hot Wheels.
Oh, yeah. I ran a Gaslands game up there in Tempe about 2 years ago.
Okay.
In the Arizona Game Fair.
Okay. Yeah.
And I actually had to turn people away.
Really?
I had the pre-registration,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone signed up for it, and everyone showed up for the pre-registration. I had 8 people around the table, and then 8 more people wanted to play on top of that. Well,
That's a lot of carnage on the table, my friend.
Sorry, I can't handle that many people.
Yeah. And we were supposed to, last year when they were going to do it, Mike and I were going to be running a class on how to build paint for Gaslands, and then running Gaslands demos for Arizona Game Fair. But COVID kind of got in the way of that, and made everybody where we can't be within 6 feet of everybody, and so, and then there was some other stuff that happened that the dude who runs Arizona Game Fair kind of rubbed people the wrong way up here, and there's a whole bunch of drama with that. But Mike and I were just talking, we just need to have a International Games Day kind of thing for Gaslands up here, and show off cars, race some cars. I actually built right before COVID hit. I was working on, I only completed half of it, a 16-foot run canyon board, kind of to mimic what Mad Max, the last Mad Max movie.
Okay.
So we wanted to recreate that kind of scene of racing through the canyon. And Darren at Imperial Outpost was like, he's like, let's do an 8-foot board. So, and I'm like, it'd be cooler is if we had a 16-foot board. And so I completed 8 foot of the 16-foot, and then COVID hit. And basically it's really just, I can use the boards for like, they're 4 foot across, 4.5 foot across. I think they are something like that. I can use them for any other kind of gaming stuff, but it's pretty much designed for Gaslands, where we were calling it El Diablo Canyon, where we would stagger people starting the race. So we would start 4 cars off, let 4 people get a certain way through the first gate or what have you, and then we would start another 4 cars behind them and just keep pushing people through. And whoever can make it to the end won, their pick of, Mike went crazy with collecting Hot Wheels. I think he's got over 5,000 Hot Wheels he's collected.
Wow.
Or if not more. But he's like, yeah, the winner is going to get like 10 free Hot Wheels,
There you go.
So here's a pick. Here's all the cars. Take a pick of what you wanted to pick. But yeah, COVID kind of put a kibosh to that and stopped us from there. So I've got 8 foot in the closet of, modular canyon board that has only been out on the table once or a couple times to be painted and everything else. But yeah. And then I did just recently a small little demo table track for Gaslands that I think I put up on our AZ Friends group. I'll have to get pictures of it. That is on basically like a 3 by 4 foot, it's almost 3.5 foot by 3.5 foot square that so you can race in. And Mike and I have been the only 2 to race on it. And we've probably raced on it about 3 or 4 times. Neither one of us has got to the finish line. Because it's, racing around in Gaslands, we like the death race kind of concept and having a set track. And when you're racing in a canyon with, non-destructible walls that can hurt you, suddenly placing of your templates becomes huge. And I think the best speed you can do is probably gear 3, so going to gear 4 and 5 and laying out the larger template, man, that does not help you on this board, because it's definitely a board that if you're not paying attention and set your lineup correctly, you will crash and burn. Mike and I have proved that time and time again. And when I first got it completed, and I told Mike, hey, maybe I should rip out some of this and make the track a little bit bigger and wider. And he's like, oh no, keep it as is. He says, because you got to get used to where you're driving at. And I'm like, well, you got a good point. So it's we may bust that board out tomorrow. I don't know. But yeah, it's a fun little way to get to it. And that's getting back out to gaming out in public. I don't know about you, Bill, but I'm still a little bit apprehensive about doing that. Not from the fact that I'm worried about catching COVID and all that, but the couple times that I have been out to the shop, people are strange right now. Maybe it's because I've been at home for so long, but the idiosyncrasies of us gamers seems to be coming out to more of the forefront when you're gaming with strangers you don't know. And it's very interesting. Mike and we had actually done a demo game for a guy probably about 2 months ago. Well, it was right before the variant D kicked in. So I guess about 2 months ago now, if not that. And this guy was a power gamer, 40K power gamer.
Oh boy.
Playing Gaslands, and built one car, 50 cans for one car,
Okay.
which I'm like, how did you get 50 cans worth of stuff on one car with a regular middleweight car and knowing how many build slots you have? And okay. And we were doing something and a rule came up and I said, no, here's what you have to do. And he's like, nope, that's not how we play it. And I'm like, well, no, this is how the rules say to play it. I go, because here it is on page such and such. And the guy's like, well, I don't own the rule book. I've been taught the game. And I'm like, dude, don't tell me you know how to play the game if you don't even own the rule book and somebody else taught you. I said, this is not DBA and DBM the way they used to teach it. Come on now. Go buy the book and read the rule book and read it. Here's what it says from the author. It's like, wow. And I told Mike after the game, because Mike's like, yeah, the guy was kind of a jerk. And I said, yeah. And I go, maybe it's just because we've been so in our little groups or not going out and being in public as much gaming. I said, but man, he was getting on my nerves. So.
Yeah, a lot of people can't be bothered to read the rules these days,
I don't know what's up with that, dude.
Yeah. And they rely on someone else to teach them the rules. Along those lines, I was actually thinking about going on a tangent on my YouTube channel and doing a series of tutorial videos on various wargaming rules.
Like how to read them?
Just how they work. I did one of them. I did Rebels and Patriots.
Okay.
And that has the most hits on my channel.
Really?
Yeah. I just did an instruction on this is how you play the game. And
nice.
I'm thinking maybe that's a direction to go in.
Well, there is something to be said about that. I mean, I don't know if you ever watch Guerrilla Miniature Wargaming with Ash Baker on YouTube.
Oh, yeah, all the time.
So, and I keep giving him crap because he's on his Throwback Thursday thing of playing Legends of the Old West. And every time I keep commenting, I'm like, dude, when are you going to throw some love to Legends of the High Seas? Ash Baker must not love pirates. But, dude, he gets a lot of hits on people watching how to play. I mean, I'll be honest, I've gone to his channel and watched how to play this game or how to watch that game. I mean, a lot of times it's not so much, because I'll go out and buy the rules and I'll read them. But I'm like, God, is that really how that works? Is that really what the author is intending? So I want to see it on the table first, whether it's somebody doing a demo game or what have you, just to kind of get sometimes the concepts of what the author was trying to do on the table. So, dude, I would say do it, because if people are liking it and you're getting big hits from it, there you go.
Now, it's not a battle report like Ash does.
Yeah.
It's straight up, this is how to play the game. And
somebody should do that for Ronin.
For Ronin?
Ronin. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. I played Ronin for a while. And my friends here that played it, it's got a neat little mechanic where you're supposed to I'm going to set aside so many actions to block and so many actions to attack. But my gaming friends, they just simply stopped putting stuff towards blocking and did nothing but attack every turn. And then it kind of blew that out of the water, that concept of, this is kind of like a little nut under the shell type of thing.
Right.
It doesn't matter when you're always attacking. And I'm like, okay, well, and it kind of made that game unplayable. Essentially, the charm of that game was the mystery of whether you're attacking or not.
Right.
But when all my opponents are saying, "Oh, I'm just gonna attack," I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah. Gee, thanks. Okay, I know what you're going to do. Let me guess. Attack? Well, and that's, as a game designer, I can say that.
Yeah.
You write a set of rules with the intent that you have in your mind for what you want it to be. Unless you have some real pain in the butt kind of players that can break those, and that's what playtesting is all about. I think a lot of games nowadays don't get play tested enough, where an author will write it, they'll get it printed, they'll get it put out, and then, oh my God, that rule doesn't work. One of the things that I learned with Legends of the High Seas, and this was taught to me from Rob Broom, who is the head of Warhammer Historical. He's like, hey, I've got a couple of these guys in the UK I want to put on your playtest group, because we play tested the game for about almost a year, because I started writing in 2006. Had the manuscript pretty much ready about first quarter of 2007. Started play testing it from that point until it released in 2008. So he's like, these two guys, and I'm not going to name names because they've got their own rules out now too, but they were the epitome of, we're going to find the one thing in your rules and we're going to break it and we're going to exploit it and we're going to. And I remember having a discussion with one guy saying, we were discussing the ship rules on how big a ship should be and how many cannon and crew it should have. And I said, a medium ship is this, small ship is this, blah, 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 just keeping it very basic. And he's like, okay, so I'm going to basically build a ship that's 18 inches long that has cannon on it that's only 1 inch wide. I'm like, what are you building, a log? I mean, it's not a boat. That's not a ship. That's just a log in the water. But he's like, well, you don't call it out. I can do that. And I'm like, really? Do I have to really be that precise? And what that taught me was the way you and I may game, or the way I may come up with a rule, or you may come up with a rule, Bill, we know what the intent is. But if we write that down and we give it to somebody else, they don't know what our thought process was when we wrote it. They don't know what our intent was with it, because that's where you see everybody raw, rules as written, how does this is what it means. I've actually had people argue with me when they didn't know I was the author of Legends of the High Seas, when the game was being played a lot. And I'd tell people, I'd stand there and watch them and go, you did that wrong. Well, who are you? What do you mean you did that? No, you're supposed to do it this way. No, the author meant this. And I'm like, really? Did the author really mean that? Because I don't think he did. No, he didn't. And I'm like, and then I would usually it was at Adepticon, and then I would flip my badge around and go, well, I am the author, and I am telling you this is how it is supposed to be played. You're breaking the rules. And of course, then I get the and you signed my book. And but once again, that was a very good learning process, because I can say it's going to be A, B, and C. This is how it works, right? But somebody may look at it and go, well, I think it reads, C, A, B, or, I don't think this is, because you really don't call it out for that. And understanding the intent of what you're writing is huge. I mean, you talk about that in the business world, getting that, your intent across in a business email. I mean, it's the same thing for a game book, writing a game book versus writing, a document for your corporation that you're working for, kind of has to follow the same kind of pattern. And I think a lot of these games that are out there, the authors don't spend that time thinking about that or play testing, because you can see some really bad rules, and then you can see erratas and FAQs that come out to fix those problems. And, you know, the one big company, GW, you know, has a problem with that is here's your rule book. Oh, and here 2 weeks later, here's your 25-page errata to fix everything that's in your rule book that we didn't think of, right?
Right.
Why wasn't that thought of before? So, yeah, I mean, as much as, and that's the other problem, like with Kickstarters and things too, you know, people can design stuff and say, oh, yeah, we're going to do stuff. And a good case in point, I'm going to go circle back a little bit, Cav with Talon Games. Once again, I'm good friends with John Walker, who owns Cav, and he's the one who wrote the rule book. But I told him, your rule book is a mess because I can't figure out how to play your game, dude. And he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, there's no flow to it. There's no, I don't understand where your intent was. And I worked with him to do up and streamline his basic rules that he now has up on his webpage.
Yeah. And
I said, well, what were you going for? And he says, well, my kids play video games and they like to play games, you know, they like to use the cheat books for video games. So I was trying to write this in the intent for video game players. And I'm like, miniature game players aren't necessarily video game players.
Yeah.
I said, you gotta, I mean.
Right for your audience.
Yeah. And how do I move the model? That should be in the movement section. I shouldn't have to dig 6 paragraphs or 6 pages into, oh, we're talking about shooting and now we're talking about moving and then we're going to go back to hand and now we're going to go. No, it needs to be cohesive. I mean, the way I try to write this, and this is maybe because the way GW wanted the format for the High Seas book, is because if you look at most of the Games Workshop books from the 90s, 2000s, early 2000s, like Legends of the High Seas, Old West and things, here's how the rules work. Here's your overview. You'll have your priority phase, you'll have your movement phase, you'll have your shooting phase, your combat phase, your end phase. And then the rule book is laid out. The first section is, here's your priority phase. Here's everything that has to do with priority. Here's your movement phase. Here's everything that has to do with movement. So whether it's crossing over, cattle railing or climbing over the side of a ship, here's everything you're going to have about movement in the movement section.
Yeah.
So when I'm flipping through the book, if I need a question to ask about movement, I can just go to the movement section of the book, and there it is. But a lot of rules don't go that route anymore. And I don't understand. I mean, for the most part, they are there, but they're not very well laid out. And I'm sorry, Games Workshop. I used to love your games, and I've spent a lot of money with you over the years. But whoever you have writing right now, good Lord.
Well, their talent has left the house. I mean, I think their talent works for Warlord Games now, I think.
Yeah, or something. Because, dude, but just to write. So, good case in point. I got talked into playing Age of Sigmar 2nd edition.
Oh, boy.
Right? I built a huge flesh eaters army, painted up all the flesh. I mean, dude, I have 80 ghouls.
Really nice model.
Yeah. I tried reading the fluff, and I was like, did they give this to like a 6th grader to write? Because it makes no sense to me. Word structure, these are boring stories. Dude, to this day, I couldn't tell you what happened in Age of Sigmar. I could tell you all kinds of history about the old world and old Warhammer fantasy, but I can't tell you jack, diddly, or squat about what AOS is and the different gates and the different worlds and the different. I'm just like, good Lord, man. You guys took a great system and you made it a mess. And
yeah,
I had in my time, I got to work for GW for about 2 months, not writing for Warhammer Historical. I actually was going to be, and I went to training in Memphis to run the Games Workshop store out in Scottsdale, not Scottsdale. Well, it is is it the Scottsdale store? Yeah, it is the Scottsdale store. I was going to be the backup manager before Scottsdale opened up.
Yeah.
And because originally they were going to build that store over by Arizona Cardinals football stadium. God, I can't remember that down over there. They were going to put it by the stadium. And then they moved it. They said they were going to move it to Desert Ridge, which is a little bit further away from me. Then they finalized where they were going to put it in Scottsdale. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not driving 35 minutes to go be a backup manager when the manager calls out or what have you. But when I was at the training in Memphis, the first thing they tell you, Games Workshop is the premier miniature company, not game rules company. The rules are secondary. We make the best miniatures in the world. 5 minutes into the first meeting, that's what they tell you. And of course, me being a little bit stubborn and, always pushing the bounds, I'm like, I got a question about that. Because, there are other companies, Perry's, that make a heck of a lot better models than you do. A lot of other companies, Artisan, Crusader, and I thought, everybody that was ex-GW has some great models out there, and I think they would, but they didn't put any stock in their game, in their writing of their rules. The rules were secondary to them. Now, mind you, this is the sales part of the company in the U.S., but those sales managers and those trainers had to go to the U.K. and get trained and get taught this. This is what the GW culture is. And they were just, they thought their stuff didn't stink. And I can remember, now mind you, when I interviewed with Josh Wimbley, out of the 8 people that were in my training class, I was the only one. Well, there was 2 other guys. So 3 out of the 8 that were hobbyists that knew about the GW hobby. The other 5 knew nothing of Games Workshop except they sell toy soldiers. I'm going to be selling toy soldiers. That's it. So they knew nothing about how to run a store. They were just looking for salespeople. So I kind of knew this going into it already. That's why I wasn't quitting my other job. I took vacation to go down and train for a week in Memphis. And I knew something was up when the first question I get, they were showing us how to use their brand new, well, this is not one of them, file sets that they had come out with. And they had said, hey, how do you clean a file? Here's our new brand new GW. I'm using this as an example. Here's our new GW file. How do you clean this? And I said, you have one of these, a steel brush, and you go with the grain and you clean it off. Now I'm making a mess all over my computer. And the trainer looks at me and goes, wrong. Like, what do you mean wrong? Literally just like that. He goes, you wet a damp towel down and you wipe off your file, your metal file with a damp towel. So, of course, once again, being the person that I am, I raised my hand and said, I've got a question about that. Won't the damp file put moisture on your metal file and cause it to rust? His response, no joke, that'll just mean that the hobbyist needs to buy a new file. So I was like, okay, all right, so I'm going to keep my mouth shut. Now, mind you, Bill, I went and did that back, probably 6 years ago when I went through their training, 7 years ago, I think it was, when I went through their training.
Yeah.
So I've got some years underneath me of painting. When they went to show us how to paint, they were instructing us how to hold the brush. Now, I generally, when I hold a brush, and here's an example, I will generally hold it right about here on a brush. And this is an oversized example for the camera.
Yeah.
Because I want that precise kind of, painting sort of thing, right? I was told that was incorrect. I should hold the brush up here, not closer to the quick, but up here and paint this way. I'm like, what? We're not, Picasso here. I said, you have no control over your hand. You have nothing. And he's like, you're holding your brush wrong and you're painting wrong, is what the trainer told me. And I stopped and I put my brush down because I was painting an orc, a 40K orc. And I looked at him and I said, whatever your name is, how many armies have you painted? And he looked at me and he says, oh, I'm painting my first army now. I went, awesome. What are you working on? Oh, it's a 40K army. I'm painting, Gray Hunters. And I'm like, so you're dry brushing bolt gun over black, right? He goes, how did you know? I'm like, really? Was it not Gray Hunters? What are they all silver now? Gray Knights, that's what it is. Gray Knights.
Yeah.
And I looked at him and I said, and the guy that was sitting next to me, who has passed away, sadly, he was another gamer. He looked at me and he goes, are you kidding? And I looked at him and I said, nah. I go, so really, dude, your Gray Knights is what you're painting? That's your first, have you finished the army? Oh no, I just started a couple weeks ago. I got my first unit done. I'm like, dude, come to me when you've got 10 armies under your belt. I already got like 6 fantasy armies and I have, 4 40K armies. I've won awards with some of this stuff. So why don't you come back and teach me how to paint once you've won an award and just leave me the hell alone. And at that point, I pretty much checked out of the training at that point.
Yeah.
And this was the other thing that was funny because we were told, bring your armies with you that you want to play because we had access to the bunker. We could game if we wanted to at the bunker.
Right.
In Memphis. So I brought down 2 350-point Lord of the Rings armies. I brought, I think, my dwarves and orcs. Nobody at Memphis was really playing Lord of the Rings, and I had to teach some of the people that were running the GW bunker and the GW staff how to play Lord of the Rings because none of them had played before.
Yeah, I believe it.
This was at the time, one of their third, 3 core games was Lord of the Rings, Fantasy Battle, and 40K. None of them they painted miniatures, but none of them have actually played the rules. And when they learned it, they're like, wow, these are fun rules. How can you be that high up in the company and not play the rule? And mind you, Lord of the Rings had been around for quite a while already, so it wasn't new.
Yeah.
But that was the mentality they had. And it's just like, wow, guys, really? That's crazy.
And it's like management too, right?
Yeah. And well, they actually have in the bunker that they used to have in the bunker. They had kind of like a little miniature Warhammer history displays, like with old Beaky Marine boxes and old skeleton epic boxes. And, it's just GW through the ages kind of thing. And Ed Spedigue, who I don't think he's with the company anymore. He was in charge there at Memphis. I got along great with Ed. He was a UK guy. He was a gamer. He was pretty high up in the company too. We were talking during a break. He'd come out because I had known him, and it was funny because the trainers were like, oh, that's Ed Spedigue. He's like the head of the US thing. And he comes over and he starts talking to me, and they're like, how do you know Ed? And I'm like, because he's hooked me up for my Lord of the Rings events. He's helped me out. I've met him at Adepticon. I've been around the block. And they were all enamored that I knew Ed because that was Mr. Spedigue to them, right? And so here's this guy from Phoenix who knows the head of the U.S. at the time thing. And him and I are sitting there talking, and it was funny because I said, Ed, where did you find all this old stuff at? And he's like, well, I had to go out on Amazon and the internet and eBay and try to find some of this old stuff. And he says, and I had to do it under a different name because if people knew it was me trying to find old boxes, then prices would go up. He says, I had that happen a couple of times. He said, and I said, dude, I want some of those boxes you have in there that are shrink wrapped. And he goes, no, you don't, because they're just a box. He goes, you wouldn't believe how much money I spent for a box to have it shrink wrapped here to make it look like there's something in it, but there is nothing in it. It's just, I bought a box. He's told me I bought a box for $50, an old Epic 40K. I think it was a squat box. Just the old box that was in good shape, empty. He spent $50 for an empty box so they could take and put it in a display to show, hey, see what we used to make? I'm like, really? Wow. He goes, yeah, somebody bid that up on me because they knew we were trying to get it. So, and that's the thing when I was there. So, and doing training, that was the weekend that they released Finecast to the public, or as people then started calling it, Failcast.
Yeah.
And there was a big secrecy that they didn't want us to take pictures of anything or, talk about it. And the first miniature I had picked up, I can't remember what it was. It was some fantasy piece, had a big old huge miscast on it. And I'm like, this is what you're going to be selling people? This is ready to go to the stores? Oh, that one must have slipped through the, process to quality check. I'm like, okay. So, yeah, the fun of GW.
I had picked up one and only Finecast, and it was a Grey Knight of all things, and it was the leader of the Grey Knights, and his sword was all droopy, and I was like, really, GW, you're supposed to be the top of the top dogs of miniatures, and you're selling me, I had to special order it, and sell me a miniature with a droopy sword. I'm like, this is the quality of HeroClix, buddy. This is not Games Workshop that I remember.
Well, and to be honest and to be fair, GW has gotten their crap together, and I'm going to say this: I have a love-hate relationship with Games Workshop. I think most gamers that have been around the block do. Yeah. They've got some beautiful kits. I mean, dude, I see some of the models that are coming out, and I'm like, oh my God, they're beautiful. I mean, I'm looking up on my desk right now, here's a great example. So a little bit dusty. Let's see if you can see him. A Gene Stealer Magus, or I guess, or whatever, purebred type thing. Cool. This is from, God, it's not I'm losing it in the picture. And it's hard to see with the paint job because I got a really dark paint job on it. But it was from the set that came out with the Gene Stealer Cult when they first came out. And I used this for my kill team lead, ancient thing. It's a beautiful model. It's a great, I painted it up. I love it. It looks great on the base, everything else. But, this model right now is like a $65 model. And I'm like, hello? For $65 for one model, I don't care how good it is in plastic. I can do a lot of other stuff with $65. I can go buy me a good bottle of whiskey for that price, Yeah. And it's just like, you guys have lost sight of what the hobby, you've turned more into a publicly traded company than you have, a game company. And, a good example, a good case in point. I used to be a huge Blood Bowl fan. And, I started playing Blood Bowl with second edition with the old foam board that they used to come with. My bought all the books. I bought the 3rd edition, 4th edition. I have multiple copies of the Living Rule Book when it was the Living Rule Book and GW was trying to get rid of Blood Bowl. And when they came out with it in 2016, when they re-released it and came out with it, I was all over it. I've got 4 or 5 teams. I love Blood Bowl.
Right.
This latest now version that they've come out with, that they changed, what they basically did is they went back, because I went back and looked at my 2nd edition rules. They added in a lot of 2nd edition rules that they'd gotten rid of in the latest version. And I'm like, wait a minute, I know where this rules comes from. Wait a minute, I played this back in the 90s, and you brought it back. It's not a new rule. I just couldn't do it anymore, dude. Necromunda, the same thing. Necromunda hooked me in. I was a big Necromunda fan, or Necromunda, as some people call it.
Yeah.
I got all the, I was a Van Saar player. Loved the Van Saar models. Loved them. In 2017, when they brought Necromunda back out, I bought it. No hesitation, bought it.
Yeah.
And then, oh, hey, here, after all the books, I was buying all the faction books when they came out, right? And when they got all those books out, then what did they do? Oh, here's a revamped, cleaned up rule book. And here's all the factions in one big book. I bought it. Hook, line, and sinker. I was like, awesome.
That's how you go.
I started painting up an Escher gang. I don't like Eschers, but I painted up a full Escher gang. I went out and bought the Escher House of Blades book or whatever. And I stopped and went, why am I buying a book for a faction I don't want? A $60 book for more stuff that now changes now. And oh, by the way, I can't find the models when they released because they sold out. Can't find the dice for the faction. They sold out. So I'm like, what? It's the FOMO, fear of missing out, is what GW has capitalized on now. And finally, dude, I had to say, I'm done with Necromunda. I can't do it anymore. And I mean, I've come to that point with my gaming that I'm like, I'm done with all of the GW gaming. I mean, the last version of Kill Team, not the most recent one, I enjoyed playing Kill Team. I had a Gene Stealer cult. I had, not Grey Knights, but Death Company.
Right.
I have a Chaos Cult painted up. I was buying everything for Kill Team. Loved it. And then, oh, by the way, here's a new set of rules. And we're changing everything, how it plays. Everything that you have is pretty much done. You can't use it anymore. Oh, your Marines are too small because, we're using the bigger Marines now. And I'm just like, all right, GW, I'm done. Now I'll still play the older versions.
Yeah.
I've become one of those guys. If I'm going to play it, I'll just play the old version because I've got everything, But to change it,
better game, just play Star Breach instead of the old. And
I've heard actually a lot of good things about Star Breach. I haven't gotten it, and that leads me to another rant. God, I'm on rants today. What the hell is up with that?
Well, I'm just saying that why get mad when GW doesn't want to make rules that will be lasting? Well, for instance, my latest GW purchasing was Hormagaunts for Tyranids.
Okay.
But I don't intend on using them for any type of GW game. I have Stargrave, and they just came out with an expansion called Quarantine 37.
Yeah.
Which is a solo version where it has space bugs. And I'm like, there it is. Those models are perfect for generic space bugs.
Now, let me ask you a question, Bill.
Yeah.
Because I had first edition Frostgrave. What was your take on Frostgrave? Well, your take on Frostgrave and Stargrave. Yay or nay?
I can't say yes or no. And the reason why is I have yet to put the table in the game.
Okay.
Reading through the rules is one thing, but actually actively moving models is entirely different thing. So I can't make a good judgment. My critique on the entire series is I think that D20s are rather swingy
Yeah.
when they're rolled against each other. That's my big critique of the entire Frostgrave genre. But I do love the skirmishing setting for science fiction and fantasy. And just like you were big into the science fiction version, I was a Mordheim fan back in the day.
Oh, I love Mordheim too, dude.
That was my cup of tea. That was it's not a Necromunda. I played one or two games of it back 20 years ago, but of course I was more into the Mordheim.
Right. Well, and that's So the reason why I bring it up, and I've had the pleasure of meeting Joseph McCullough at Adepticon, and Joseph actually has said the Ghost Archipelago that he did right after Frostgrave was once again inspired a little bit by Legends of the High Seas. So I felt, hey, pat myself on the back, I inspired somebody else to write a set of rules. But what I find with Joseph's writing, and I found this with Frostgrave, and I find it with Stargrave, because I own Stargrave. I was excited for hearing about Stargrave come out. I was like, sweet. Something seems to be missing to me. It's good, but there's like this, it could be better. It's like you forgot to write something or forgot to add something. It just, because Frostgrave to me is basically Skyrim on the table, is what it is for the video game. Because, you look at it and I'm like, oh, Stargrave. This dude was looking at the Reaper catalog and came up with creatures and stuff out of the Reaper cat. Brilliant. Love it. It's Skyrim. All okay. I get it. I dig it. But yet something just seemed missing. I think it was, the focus on the wizards and not, because it's always your wizard band against my wizard band. And he's gotten better with it through, I guess, Frostgrave 2, and Stargrave has some of that as well. But there's something seems to me, and I can't pinpoint it, dude. Something about it. I tried reading through the Stargrave rule book 4 times now, and I get maybe a quarter of the way or halfway through it, and I just put the book down or I fall asleep. and not to say that I have like narcolepsy or something, and I just, out. But I'm like, God, your writing's not inspiring. The rules aren't very inspiring to get me to go, yes, I want to get this out on the table. I want to play this. I want to like the games. And I played Frostgrave probably about a dozen games of Frostgrave, and I loved the game. I loved the games that we had. There was nothing that I went, oh, that was kind of weird, and that didn't work. But after we played, and even trying to play the campaign aspect of following up, it just didn't seem there. Once again, I can't put a finger on it, but there was just something missing about it. Like I said, when Stargrave came out, I was super excited about that because I'm like, sweet, Stargrave. I can build my own, space cap. Because, one of my favorite shows, and I was just talking about this earlier today with a friend online. One of my favorite shows, Farscape.
Farscape, okay.
I love Farscape. I love Jim Henson and his production company. But Farscape, I'm like, oh my God, that's Stargrave. I can do a Farscape kind of thing, right?
I'm going to go in a different direction.
Yeah.
I have Western terrain, so I'm thinking more Firefly.
Yeah, you can see it.
Throw a bunch of sci-fi terrain with my Western stuff already.
Boom. There you go.
type of thing.
And that's, dude, perfect. I mean, you can't go wrong with that. That's for sure. So I don't know. It's just sometimes I wonder, is it me being so picky because I have written rules before in games, that I'm not giving people an honest shake at their rules? Or is it I'm just getting to be a grouchy old man? You know.
Obviously, the base rules don't have everything that I want in it, right? And to me, it's expected, especially with the Frostgrave, Stargrave system. And the reason why I expect it as a consumer is I know that there'll be maybe half a dozen expansions coming out that will fill
Right.
those that'll scratch that itch that I'm looking for. And
Okay.
that's what my anticipation is. Oh, I wanted the bugs. I want like a solo type of AI type of thing going on. You know, that's exactly the next expansion, which I haven't gotten yet, is exactly what I was looking for in that game.
And see, and that's why I still own Frostgrave. And like I said, I have the first version. I didn't buy the second edition rule book because I heard there was not a whole lot of changes to it. I finally, toward the end, before they announced they were going to do, Frostgrave 2, I finally got the spell card deck that Osprey had finally put out to go with all the spells instead of having to photocopy them in the back of the book. Or there was a guy on, I think, at the Lead Adventures forum that has actually, I think he sold his templates to Osprey because he had done front and back cards for all the spells and things. And I'm like, that's brilliant. And then he was selling them for like $20 or something, and then they disappeared. So I think he sold them to Osprey, and then Osprey started producing them, which took forever to get, which I finally got them. And I'm like, sweet, I haven't even taken them out of the package. Just like there was the one thing that and this is where really I thought helped, is they had like kind of mini scenario cards, and I can't remember the name, and I'm too lazy to get up and go grab them off my shelf behind me. But they gave you like subplots to the game.
Yeah.
So you would draw a card, and I remember Robert and I played a game with this where his subplot was he was trying to collect poison from spiders on the table, which were just randomly tokens we put on the table. And mine was one of my guys was bitten by a werewolf, and I was trying to search for the antidote. And if I didn't do it by a certain number of turns, my guy turned into a werewolf and started to attack whoever was around him. So one of the things that while I was searching is I sent my dude that was bitten by the werewolf. I'm like, hey, go over there next to Robert's guys. Go hang out over there and look for it over there, because I don't know if I'm going to find this or not. And I didn't. And the guy turned into a werewolf, and he was closest to Rob's, gang of people, and started ripping into them. But it was kind of a cool because it was that random subplot that you didn't know what you were going to be doing.
Yeah.
So you might have designed and said, okay, we know what scenario this is. This scenario, right? X marks the spot scenario. But then suddenly throw in saying, oh, well, now you got to go and kidnap one of the other people's apprentice, or, rescue some damsel in distress that you place a random token on the table. So now it suddenly changes up your game, where you're suddenly like, well, wait a minute, I'm not playing the regular scenario. I'm playing something else now. I love that aspect in games when you have that subplot context for a game.
Oh, yeah.
Because
muskets and tomahawks?
Muskets and Tomahawks, they had that too.
Type of thing.
Yeah. And that was another game I loved. Unfortunately, I only got to play it once. I played with Mike, and Mike didn't like it because all the cards came up. I was getting all my cards to activate first before his.
Oh. Okay.
So he's like, "Oh, this stinks." Although he loves bolt action for the randomness of the draw, and I'm like, "It's the same thing, dude. It's just a card. That's it." But that went nowhere, and I only got like half of my out because I wanted to do it for AWI. So
Okay.
muskets and tomahawks for that for small skirmish for War of Independence. I was like, man, this is the Patriot all over. I can play this, the Mel Gibson style kind of game of ambushing, a royal convoy on a bridge kind of thing. I can do that with this game, and that's something that I always look at, and I'm always inspired by movies or what have you. And I'm like, I'd make a great game. And
Oh yeah, Vikings was my inspiration.
yeah,
So
great, another great movie, and you're right. It is. Now that one didn't bite me as hard for the, frontier skirmish type thing, French and Indian War kind of stuff. But, dude, it's still a great period and a great, to do. So,
yeah,
dude.
And the same, the other game that I picked up and I played a half a dozen times already is A Test of Honor by Great Fanatic Games. It's the second edition.
Because Warlord had it first, right?
Yeah.
Test of Honor. Okay.
It's an okay mechanical set of rules, but it is missing a good campaign type of system. And if you're gonna have like a gang of samurai, it's something that I want to do. And that's another thing that was lacking in Ronin was that Mordheim type of aspect. What's gonna roll for you guys after the game is done, and see what happens, and then go to the next game.
And that's why Mark Latham and I both have the Legends series going back to that. It was used off the Mordheim Necromunda campaign engine. I love that aspect of what happened to my guy, right? How did this go about? That's just like,
yeah,
I don't have it. I was going to pull it. The Battle Company's rules for Lord of the Rings, where you basically start out as a no-name guy with a few figures, and you basically become a hero. I love that, and I'm kind of altering that system, which is not a new system. I've seen it with other people, and that's where I'm gathering for the Legend of Vikings, Legend of Samurai, and all that, is you're becoming your own hero, whether you're going to do well or not. And that's one of the things that, that comes from that Necromunda Mordheim campaign aspect, right? How is my guy going to have a limp? Is he going to have one hand? Is he going to be the best, swordsman or best bowman or whatever, I want to see how that happens on the tabletop. It tells a story, so that's definitely inspiration. So anyway, dude, how long do you go with for these things?
Coming
up on what, 2 hours?
2 hours or a little bit further than I normally do.
Oh,
but I got some painting done. Did you get a lot done with your cars?
Yeah, well, it's done. It's ready to go now.
Oh.
It's just now. It just needs paint. So, honestly, I got to get it out in the garage and prime it. And
I got all the straps done on all 24 of these guys.
Nice.
Which is probably the hardest bit when it comes to black powder is doing all the white straps.
That's one reason why I don't do Napoleonics, dude. I painted for Robert. I painted a 24-man unit for him.
Yeah.
In a trade for something, and I was match painting off of what he did. Good Lord, man. I was ready to shoot myself after I was done. I think they were Russians. So they were the green jacket basically white, everything else off-white pants. They had the red cuffs on their jacket and everything. And I'm just like, and to make matters worse, I'm a black primer. I love to prime in black and then dry brush to pick out all my highlights and everything. Robert, for his Napoleonics, primes in white. So, dude, going back to white prime, because black is very forgiving and you can hide a lot of mistakes.
Yeah. And I'm curious about changing my method based off of this, and I have not tried it yet. And going back to the Evil Empire, Games Workshop has this product called contrast paints. And apparently, you can get like a white primer and then put this paint on there, and it just simply does all the shading for you in one go. Now, I've heard nothing but wonderful things about that. But what I don't like about the Games Workshop pots is that they're easy to knock over, and they're like little, and they're easy to spill.
Yeah.
And so I've been eyeballing Scale 75 instant paint, instant color, which apparently is the same thing but in dropper bottles.
Yeah, dude. I mean, droppers, I have a whole collection of the Reaper paints, Army Painter.
Yeah.
I've ventured into Turbo Dork for some of their paints.
Vallejo. Yeah.
I've got Vallejo too. And believe it or not, here's a throwback for you. Citadel paint. There's still stuff in it.
That stuff left.
Well, that's just like, and you want to go, you can go further. Where's it? Armor Wash. Now listen, that bottle's almost full. Now this has got to be what, a 20 or 30-year-old bottle.
It's not separated after all that time?
Well, it's a wash. So Armor Wash was great. It basically, Armor Wash had flecks of metal in it. So when you washed it over silver, kind of like the Null Oil kind of thing, you would get then the Specs 2 in there. But here's the funny thing. So I have that. And then one of the GW's newer pots, there's hardly anything in here because it's dried up. And I'm going to tell you.
Shaking your bottle?
Yeah, dude, I'm not fancy like you.
This is actually for
nail polish.
Nail polish.
Yep.
And I use it on my dropper bottles all the time.
Well, one of the things that I do with most of mine is AK, the metal balls.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
I have 2 of these bottles that goes into every dropper bottle that I do. So I can't hear it in that one because it's too full. Most of them have it in here, like all the colors that I've been using, especially for the Army Painter stuff. You need it because this stuff is really super thick. But I got the whole line pretty much of model color. And then I'm going to probably make people sick, but behind me here is my Vallejo rack with all my Vallejos. And I'll show you what I mean by all my others.
Oh, good grief.
That's primarily all Army Painter and all that kind of fun stuff as I swing around and make everybody sick. I have some P3. I actually even have. Do you remember these bottles?
Oh yeah, from Ralph Pertha.
Yep. And
yeah, I remember those. I had a whole bunch of those, but they all dried up on me.
Yeah, but listen.
That's out of control.
So it's all about how you take care of your paints. Now, some bottles are going to do better than others. Dropper bottles seem to be the best. But here's the quick story. So when GW switched over from, their hexagon base to this crappy, lid base with this funky. Now they've got a new style of that. I was there when they did that changeover too at GW. That was also the other thing that they were releasing during Failcast. And I raised my hand up and said, your paints suck because they dry out so quickly. I said, I'm in Arizona and these paints dry out incredibly quick when using them. And the trainer once again looked at me and said, causes you to come in to buy more paint, doesn't it?
Oh, good grief.
And I'm like, I can't argue that. So I said, I've got paints that are 25, 30 years old. And he says, and exactly, that's why we don't make those kind of bottles anymore. One, we don't have the manufacturer. But two, if everybody had bottles that were 25 years old and they were still using them, nobody would be buying paint today. I'm like, sure they would. Because people, I'm buying paint, but, I use that Armor Wash very, very rarely. That was my last bottle. And I've actually got a red wash, a blue wash. All the old GW blue washes are great, but no, my main go-to though, I have to say, and I do everything now with this Army Painter Strong Tone.
Strong Tone, huh?
This stuff is gold. I love it. So highly recommend that. And as well as the Reaper paint too, dude. I've got a whole collection of Reaper paint. Once again, when I was working with Talon Games, there you go. Yep. Dude, let's put it this way. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bottles of Strong Tone up here on my rack. I don't let that drop below 3. Because, dude, I use it for Strong Tone is like the magic coverall. And the other one that I use that I actually like, but I have to go get some more, is Vallejo Washes that they have. This is black, Negro. They do all kinds of different colors. It's just as good as the Strong Tone. So, if not better, although it's a little bit darker, but they have like a sepia one, another lighter color, which are also good. And I got to go get some more. I'm just waiting for my hobby shop, Andy's hobby shop, to actually get a restock of those so I can go in and get those.
Have you tried the contrast paints?
I haven't, because I don't want to spend $8.99 on a bottle of paint.
Yeah.
And it's all about perspective, right? So a good case in point, on a side note, here's what COVID has done for me. Has turned me into a bigger drinker than I was before the pandemic. But I have fallen in love with and been watching a lot of YouTube channels on how to make tiki drinks, right? Okay. So that whole tiki escapism thing. So I will go and happily spend, if you have a mug and you have a tiki drink and you stick pineapple frond in it or something, I will happily go and spend $12, $15, $16 on one drink, which is really only, most of it's all filled with ice. But yet I have a problem spending $8.99 for a bottle of contrast paint. So it's all about a matter of perspectives. And that's the other thing, the way I look at it too with GW is, the new Kill Team set that came out was like, what, $230 for the Kill Team set to get some new orcs and the Death Krieg and the terrain and everything.
Yeah, they're
for the
pricing
box set. And I'm like, okay, so for $230, my wife and I can go to a tiki bar, order dinner, order drinks for me, her, and a couple people we take with us, and have a better time than I did with spending $230 on a GW thing where I'm not going to get to play all that often. We had a good friend of ours up here, Lonnie Jordan.
Yeah.
Big, huge 40K gamer. Dude, he had every version came out. He would buy every codex. He was a tournament player. I painted up he had a Death Krieg army that I painted up like German Fallschirmjägers colors.
Yeah.
Armor, I mean, I did a commission for him and did a beautiful army. I mean, Lonnie spent a ton of money, but he also liked Harleys.
Okay. That could be a hobby in itself.
Yes. When your toy soldiers start costing as much as parts for your Harley, you have to make a decision on which hobby is more important to you. This is why I say Lonnie doesn't play gaming anymore, but he's got a couple of nice tricked out Harleys that he loves going for rides on.
Yeah.
But when you're having to spend the same amount of money, whether it be for your motorcycle, for if you're into shooting and buying, guns or ammunition, or like my brother being a musician, and suddenly prices start getting up there, which you're paying for equipment. Suddenly, yeah, that's not a very big important deal anymore, right? And here's a good case in point. Another thing that I'll pull this on the screen here. Hold on.
Oh, I want to show something else. A couple months ago, I made myself a drink that was just at home, but probably would have cost about what you're talking about for a drink. Because I got inspired by a channel called Pretty Good Cooking.
Okay.
It was how to make a Bloody Mary ridiculous.
All right.
And here we go. I'll share it with you. And
nice.
Now I'm a keto diet, so everything on here is keto friendly.
Keto friendly, yeah. And alcohol to boot.
Yes. Well, yeah, that's the nice thing about keto is a low carb means that I can drink alcohol, but I can't have beer.
Yeah.
So.
Well, during the pandemic, what I found is a great YouTube channel and a great YouTube guy called Spike's Breezeway Cocktail Hour. Mm-hmm. Spike is his real name is Matt Marble. He plays in a band called the Hula Girls, which is a surf rockabilly kind of Hawaiian band in Southern California. When COVID hit, and he's big into the tiki scene, rockabilly, tiki, that lowbrow kind of culture that's going on now. But, he plays the surf music and stuff.
Okay.
Well, they couldn't perform anymore because they were doing shows at tiki bars and stuff. So during COVID, he started his own cocktail show because he loved going to like Don the Beachcomber and Trader Vic's and things. Well, he went and found old 1930s, 1940s recipe books and menus. So on his channel, he will make a Mai Tai from 1930 with the original ingredients, or getting as close to it as he can, or going through and doing like a Navy grog, a tiki, and he digs into the history a little bit and tries to use the same vintage glass that it might have been served in with Trader Vic's in the 30s or 40s that he's found, and just digs into it and does it every Friday night. Well, my wife, I stumbled across the channel because being a Disney guy, one of my favorite places at Disneyland, I've only been there once, is Trader Sam's, which is in the Disneyland Hotel. It's a themed tiki bar. Like if you order a certain drink, something on the wall happens, right?
Okay.
But very themed, like you would think it's a seedy little tiki bar. He, is into that culture. I found it because I was like, oh, what is this channel? And started watching it. And it's 25, 30 minutes YouTube channel, not like this, 2 hours, where everybody probably checked out after 20 minutes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, normally most of my videos are about 3 or 4 minutes long.
Okay.
My battle reports are sometimes about 10 or 15 minutes long. So.
Well, this is a live stream, so.
Yeah. This is I'm gonna sit down, paint some models, and listen to these guys BS for the next couple hours.
Yeah, while you're painting.
Yeah. That's basically what this is about.
So here's what I was going to show you. Now, what I'm going to show you, you can see it a little bit in the background up here, up on the wall. That's my model railroad that I have. So I'm a model railroader. You can kind of see it.
That's cool.
Up here in the back. It's just a shelf layout. Don't mind the camo paint scheme on the wall.
No worries.
So locomotives can range anywhere from 230 on up for locomotives in HO scale. Now I'm going to show you this big ass box here, right? Can you see the price on there?
$149. Wow.
Yeah. Now, mind you, if you look at that's a good example instead of me taking it out. It's a big 4-axle locomotive. This thing, dude, I'm telling you, has got to be. Well, this is 12 inches. My ruler here is 12 inches. So you can see if I can get it on the camera. It's not the box. It's about an 18-inch, 15-inch box. This is $149.
Good grief.
Now, mind you, this is one locomotive. I can get hours and hours of fun out of this thing running it around a layout. Mind you, won't ever run on my layout because it's a switching layout. It's too big to run on there. Friend gave this to me. But when GW games start costing as much as one locomotive, which is electronic and it runs, and I have to spend $230 on stuff I got to paint myself because this model.
Yeah.
Let me quickly take it out of the box. You might not be able to see all of it in the video in the camera here, but let's see. It's fully painted. You can't. The glare is pretty bad, but it's a fully painted locomotive, ready to go right out of the box. All I have to do is slap it on the track, and boom, it goes. Now, if I spend an extra $50, $60, it can be sound in it. So I got this for free, so I'm not going to worry about that. But
yeah,
once again, what's the importance in the hobby? You know, how much is it worth to you to have something? Yeah, I'm sorry, GW. I've got other expensive hobbies, and
you know you're gonna hate me because I just recently bought and painted up a train that's a fraction of that price.
Did you buy the Sarissa one?
No, even cheaper than that.
Really?
Yeah. Let me share here.
Well, while you're trying to share, I will pull out my Sarissa one.
Here we go. So I got this train. I got two of them.
Okay.
So I could get 2 cattle cars and 2 passenger cars,
Pseudo passenger cars.
and then enough track to be able to put on the table.
Well, here's the Sarissa one. Once you go back to that, is laser cut, put together. Top comes off. Well, usually it comes off. It's stuck on. Here's the locomotive for it. And if you can tell, you can see they're all discs on here. But I'm working on this, getting it painted and painted up.
Okay.
I think this was only like, let's see this. Well, I got the set, which came with the train, came with the station, track. I got enough track to do 8 foot of track. I think it was like $40.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah. And it's a laser cut kit that takes forever to put together, even longer to paint. But I've got a passenger car, cattle car, a caboose, the locomotive, tender, and a flat car. And I think it's like $40 is what you get for that on the Sarissa site. And I have to give a big shout out to Sarissa because not only do they do that, but And trust me, I've talked to Sarissa too, because they know I was placing my order. I did a south of the border set that they do, which is a kind of a Spanish Mexican village kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I ordered their bundle from them from the UK. Sorry, I'm just trying to move a box around with my feet. I got it within a week from the UK during COVID. So that wasn't a problem. I paid $5 for shipping, and it cost me like $45 to have that and a bunch of other stuff shipped to me. But it was funny because I get an email from them confirming, my order. And then right after I get that, I get another email saying, hey, can we ask you a question? Are you the same Tim Kalinske that is the Legends of the High Seas author guy? And I'm like, yeah, that's me. And they're like, oh my God, we love your stuff. We didn't know we knew you're in the US, da, da, da. We've been playing Legends of the High Seas here in the studio. And we're trying to get, that's when they're starting to work on all their boats and everything that they're doing.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, we'd love to pick your brain. And I'm like, here's what you can do. Take some of your Tudor buildings that you have, put them together in a bundle pack for like a British, Caribbean set. Because I did you can't really see it. Let me go pull it down. So this is one of their kits here. It's their kind of Spanish style kit.
Nice.
What I've done to it is, and they have interiors too. Pseudo interiors. Glare pretty bad. And I actually made the doors actually work on here, so I can open the doors up or not. Funny what you can use with duct tape to get a door to work. But I took the roof, because you can see it's a roof. It's like Spanish tile.
Right.
That is corrugated cardboard from a doll craft store for doing tile roofs. And I laid it in, I cut it in as strips, so singular strips, and laid them down and kind of put them in a somewhat pseudo pattern of every other one, and did up this kit, because this will be my Spanish, kit type thing for Mexican village kind of thing. Did a real basic paint job on it, but like a stippling paint job on the building, because that's the one thing with Sarissa, you don't get them painted like foreground. If you put a little bit of work into them, they look phenomenal. Up on the shelf, up here in the far corner, if I can move my fingers right, up over there in the corner, there's actually a old church and train station, Spanish style train station. When they saw what I did, they actually featured it on their Facebook page when I sent them pictures of it, because they asked me to send pictures to the stuff. I was hoping they would like, hey, let me send you some more kits for free and you can paint them up. And they didn't do that. So maybe, but one of the things too that I also did with this, and you might not be able to see it in the camera. Yeah, you can't see it. But I cut out cobblestone, like flagstone, for underneath the porch and put that down. So just by doing that out of, paper, cardboard, thin cardboard, putting the different roof on here and doing a pretty good stippling effect. And you can see on here too, the cracks. Well, if I can get it up here in the wall.
We got a visitor here.
I see that. A little bit of work and these kits look great, so I highly recommend Sarissa to anybody, if anybody's still watching us.
We get one person watching us.
Okay. Because they're beautiful kits. They're inexpensive. You're going to pay half the price of what you pay for a foreground kit. And you can get them shipped from the UK here to the States within a week and a half, which is phenomenal. And, I had a problem when I ordered the train. I actually was missing the flat car. Oh, wow. And I sent them an email and said, hey, I was supposed to get the flat car with this too in the bundle. And like, oh, so sorry, let us send it right out. And dude, within a couple of days, I had it. They freaking air freighted that thing to me from the UK, and the great customer service. I've got, like I said, I got like a Jungle Cruise launch boat that I did, like for an African Queen kind of sort of thing. I got quite a bit of stuff up there for them. They got a great little water tank set for an Old West that works great. Highly recommend them. They're putting out more and more stuff daily, it seems, and a great set of people. And that's the nice thing is with foreground. I love foreground kits because a lot of my Old West buildings are foreground kits too. But foreground had some problems, and they're harder to get and they're more expensive. Sarissa seems to be picking it up, and I think they did for Test of Honor. They actually were doing some of the buildings. That's where some of their Oriental buildings that they were doing, their Japanese buildings and stuff they were doing for Test of Honor for second edition. So highly recommend Sarissa. Is a great point for if you want a laser cut kit and you don't have a 3D printer like some people, Bill, that you can just print the stuff out and go with it. So they're a great little company. I highly recommend them. Can't say enough about it.
I just bought some. Well, actually, my wife bought it for me.
Yeah, that's what you were showing earlier, the Stagecoach and that.
Stagecoach. So
yeah.
And the reason why is that I was telling her that I couldn't find any STL files for a Stagecoach or wagons, and she's like, "Okay, I'll go and look for it." And she bought this on Amazon, I think.
And how much was it?
Well, she got 2 of them for $20.
Dude, $10 for a Stagecoach? I mean, come on, it's going to be a beautiful Stagecoach once you get it built.
So I'm not sure what I'm going to do with 2 Stagecoaches, but we'll see what happens.
Well, that's kind of like I'm trying to think. Oh, I pushed it further back up on my shelf up at the top. I've got one of the foreground Stagecoaches that was for Dead Man's Hand that I was given. And it was a pain in the butt to put together.
Oh, really?
And that's the one thing that any of the laser cut kits, I highly recommend you test fit everything.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you're spending, big bucks on a foreground kit, and here's another thing too. So Sarissa, I had ordered the launch set, and a dock set. And I also ordered the South Pacific set for like my Japanese gaming and island gaming that I'm actually working on. The dock set, they actually give you 2 sets of docks for it instead of 1. And it only says 1. And I'm like, wow, I've got enough to do like 4 foot across my table of dock. So I was like highly excited about that because I'm like, woohoo, I got a bonus, but it's just the way it's packaged. You get the set only says it comes with 1 set, but you actually get 2 sets of docks, which is nice.
What do you think of Crescent Root?
Crescent Root, I have a lot of, okay, so I have a lot of, yeah, I've been wanting to come down to them. I love their stuff. I have some of their old resin stuff in 28 mil.
Yeah.
So I was bummed when they got rid of the resin. Crescent Root actually sent up a kind of Middle Eastern desert building for Gathering in the Desert when we did for Bolt Action. They sent that, and I think there's some prize support they sent us that we gave away. And I love them, dude. I think one of the things that I want to do, and I want to go down because I'm curious if they're open to the public, is if they are, I might spend a whole lot of money at their facility.
It's not a facility.
Is it a garage?
It says garage. And basically, when you're saying open to the public, it's under quotation marks. So if you're local, instead of paying for shipping, you can just drive to his house.
Pick it up.
Pick it up.
Hey, I have nothing but mad props for them too, because like I said, I loved customer service from the guy that owns Crescent Root. When I had ordered, because back in the day when he had the resin stuff, you could get it pre-painted or not.
Yeah.
And I had asked him, my buddy Mike Gingold had ordered a bunch of his pre-painted stuff. And I loved it. I ordered a bunch of the stuff because it was cheaper to get it unpainted because he wasn't having to paint it. And so I emailed him and said, hey, what paints are you using, to paint this stuff? Because I love the way it looks and I want to match paint it to my buddy's stuff. He sent me the exact paint that he uses and everything and said, here's the 3-stage step that I do. And then since he did, at one point, he had the steps on how to paint them on the website, on the Crescent Root website.
Yeah.
I love his stuff, dude. I mean, about the only negative thing I would say is that some of the stuff that I saw is not in production anymore.
Yeah.
Because he goes in those series that he makes a bunch of stuff and he has those for a while. But yeah,
I want to buy stuff, but I don't wargame in any of the errors that he makes. And that's
but here's the thing. So like one year at Adepticon, I went and played not Dave Paul's, Dave Taylor, which I'm friends with Dave Taylor too, old GW, War Games Illustrated and all that. He had done a Rosetta Stone game at Adepticon. And the Rosetta Stone was basically Napoleonic going into Africa looking for the Rosetta Stone. Nice. And it was something that Napoleon had sent his troops in. So you have Napoleonic troops in the desert is what it is. And there were small expeditions. And Dave was like, let's use Legends of the High Seas as the format for it. Because it's got guns, it's got swords, it's got everything, right? And I was going to Adepticon that year. And so Dave had actually reached out to me because him and I had met back in 2008 at Adepticon. So I've known him for quite a while. And he's like, hey, can you write me up a scenario for it? I'm like, sure, I'll write you up an adaptation for what rules you need to use. So in one of the War Games Illustrated, and I have it here, he actually put together an article that I helped him write for scenarios and stuff. And there's like a short, here's how you play. Here's the gangs, the Moroccans, the Turks, the French. I think he had British in there too, for doing skirmishing in with Napoleonic figures in the desert in North Africa, looking for the Rosetta Stone, playing with my rules. And that was the year that when I was at Adepticon, I was double booked to play in 2 games because we were going to play that. We were going to play like 3 or 4 games one night. And then there was my friend John Humphreys of Plastic Legion's blog was doing a big Legends of the High Seas pirate game. And he's like, you got to be here for the pirate game. You got to be here. You're the author. You got to be here. Like, all right. We were playing in the same hall. We were actually on the far end of the table playing with the Rosetta Stone game. And then the other end of the table was this big 12-foot table, 4-foot by 12-foot table for Legends of the High Seas. We had 25 players, I think, playing in the High Seas game. So just a big, raucous group. Well, I played one game of the Rosetta Stone, got that done. I played against my buddy Merle Dillinger from Kansas. Went down to talk to John, was handed a mug with rum in it. Like, you got to drink with us. You're the pirate king, you got to drink. After that first bottle or first glass of rum, dude, I don't remember how many glasses of rum I had. I never played another game after that. All I do know is my mug was never empty. We started at like 6 o'clock in the afternoon. I think we wrapped up at about 1 o'clock. We were the loudest group in the hall because you're a bunch of drunken pirates, gamers playing pirates.
Yeah.
And everybody, and actually the Rosetta Stone, Dave and his group, because they had done after the first game, they had ordered pizza and they were sitting around drinking, and they're like, oh, we can't. They just gave up because we were so loud at the other side of the table. And we were in there with, I think, the fantasy battle in the evening, and some of the other smaller games, but you could hear us, people said, outside of the game hall. Now, it wasn't a very big game. We weren't in the main game hall, exposition hall. It was a smaller room. But people could hear us and came into the room to find out what was all this roaring and laughing and cheering. And here it is, 25, 26 drunken gamers drinking rum, rolling dice. And I'm like, that is a pirate game. So, but yeah, I mean, you can do, so long story is, you could buy Middle Eastern stuff from Crescent Root, dude, and you could do Napoleonic stuff with it. You could do World War II with it. You can do pulp stuff with it if you get into pulp gaming, Yeah. And that's the thing is, I try to, my terrain, I've got a lot of Old West, and believe me, one of the things I was going to do with my Old West stuff is I was going to play Fistful of Lead, and I'd purchased from WizKids with their new D&D line. They have the T-Rex. They have a Triceratops. There's a movie, an old movie. I think it was like a 50s or 60s movie, The Valley of Gunga, I think it is. It's where cowboys go to this lost valley and find dinosaurs in the desert living. So they're having a shootout with dinosaurs. And I'm like, oh my God, I can do this with Fistful of Lead, and then the other one that I was going to do, and I'm hesitant to say it, but it probably is not going to happen because COVID and everything else and some of the stores around here. I was going to do Cowboys versus Aliens.
Okay.
But I was going to use aliens from the movie Aliens as opposed to the aliens. So what I was going to do is purchase some of those new Gale Force 9 aliens that are out for their game, which are great. I built the Queen for my wife, and she has it sitting at her desk at work. I was going to make tumbleweeds. I was going to take and rob some of the, the whole concept was, here's this abandoned town, and you're there to loot the town. So everybody would be playing. So this was going to be the Halloween game instead of the Gothic horror game. Everybody was going to be playing an Old West gang, trying to loot this town of gold and liquor and everything else. But nobody knows why everybody left. So what I was going to do is, in my I have a huge foreground barn. That's where the alien queen was at. And that's where the aliens were hiding, is in the barn, because nobody ever goes into that barn anyway when we play Old West. So I was going to make tumbleweeds as like blip counters, like the old Space Hulk game, and move tumbleweed markers around the board to represent the aliens, because it would be at night and nobody would know. They would just see a blowing tumbleweed until you got into line of sight with an alien. And then I would flip the counter over to say, oh, there's 3 aliens, or oh, there's 1 alien. And there you go. So
that sounds like a lot of fun. Well,
hold on a minute, Bill.
To do a game in the future. I think
hey,
this is a good.
I'm still on this call. Can I give you a call right back? All right, bye. Sorry, my wife.
I was thinking this is a good time to end. Put an end to it. But thanks a lot for
no problem.
And talking with me. I appreciate it,
dude.
Again, and we need to actually do another game soon.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
I know my wife loved that game with the Halloween
theme,
version.
The Gothic horror. Which, remember, the vampires won. You all lost. So yeah, that's we may do that again here in October. So that's definitely on, because I can't commit right now to the Cowboys versus Aliens, especially since I just put it. You're going to have it on your YouTube channel. That's kind of but that may one day show up. But yeah, we definitely need to get together again. And dude, anytime you want to have me on, let me know, as long as I'm available.
Hey, there you go.
I'm here for it.
Regarding your Western stuff, maybe the game we play in the future can be Dracula's America. What do you think?
I've seen it. I've never played it. So, I mean, if you got the rules and you're willing to teach me, I'll play. I'll push anything around.
Okay, cool.
So, works for me, buddy.
All right. Well, thanks a lot again, and take it easy now, okay?
All right, buddy. Have a good one, Bill.